Welcome back to Hardball. Well, another former Bush staffer, White House staffer for President George W. Bush, has a book coming out next week, and we've got some excerpts from GQ magazine. They're pretty amazing. Joining me right now to talk about it is Pat Buchanan. Of course, he's an MSNBC analyst and former advisor to Vice President Al Gore, Mike Feldman. Both gentlemen, you're going to enjoy this because both these fellows have been on the inside, Pat forever. But let's catch this. This is an excerpt from about President George W. Bush's reaction about the idea of Sarah Palin being tapped as John McCain's vice presidential running mate. Quote, "I'm trying to remember if I've ever met her before. I'm sure I must have." His eyes twinkled. Then he asked, "What is she, the governor of Guam?" The excerpt continues, quote, "This woman is being put into a position she's not even remotely prepared for. She hasn't spent one day on the national level. Neither has her family. Let's wait and see how she looks 5 days out." Pat Buchanan, very, very... What's the right word?
You know, it's very insightful. Quite frankly, it's astute. It's politically astute. She was a sensation, no doubt, and all the White House apparently was excited.
But he obviously remembered as being an attractive lady and the whole thing. You know, he his eyes glinted or whatever.
But he said, "Where's she from? Guam." He knew exactly where she was from.
Mike Feldman, I think the president has a little... I think this is helping Bush's image here. Go ahead.
Look, he had the exact same reaction that I had when I heard that she had been picked, so I actually relate to
What, she was good-looking but lightweight?
Actually, I didn't know what she looked like.
Oh,
I'd never heard of her.
He apparently liked her looks. Let's go to this funny one. This is a little rougher, to say the least. This is an excerpt from former President Bush about Hillary Clinton, the now Secretary of State. He always believed Hillary Clinton would be the Democratic nominee. This is the writer talking about the president. He was a speechwriter. He thought that President Bush thought that his successor would be Senator Clinton. Quote, this is his quote, Bush's, according to this writer, "Wait till her fat, well, rear end, I guess, is sitting at this desk," he once said, except he didn't say that word.
That is, Chris, that is the locker room at the country club. Yeah. That's exactly what that is. And it is a disparaging of her and stuff like that, but I don't take it that badly, quite frankly. I mean, that's boy talk, I think.
So Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton wouldn't mind hearing this?
Well, Bill Clinton.
I mean, what do you think of this, Mike Feldman?
I failed to find the historical relevance of that comment.
Okay.
I'm trying to find a connection.
So PC. Let's go to this third one here. Yeah. This is definitely aimed at the Democrats again. This is a very funny line, I think. I hope Joe enjoys this, the vice president. This is about Joe Biden, our vice president. The author writes, quote, here's how he describes the president. "He paused for a minute. I could see him thinking maybe he shouldn't say it, but he couldn't resist. If BS, bull, we know the word is, was currency," he said straight-faced, "Joe Biden would be a billionaire." A billionaire.
He said, we all laughed and laughed, or burst out laughing. It is very, very funny because, quite frankly, it has a touch of truth to it, Chris.
Right, I know, it's so funny.
There'd be a lot of wealthy people in Washington, let's just say that.
Okay. You won't give him anything. Okay, let's go to this last one here. There's one more. This is the one about a McCain event where McCain's having a hard time scratching together enough people. This excerpt is Bush when he learns the McCain campaign has agreed to appear at an event, but he can't get people. Quote, "He can't get 500 people to show up for an event in his hometown?" No one said anything. And then we went to another topic, but the president couldn't let the matter drop. Quote, "He couldn't get 500 people. I could get that many people to turn up in Crawford." He shook his head. This is a 5-spiral crash, boys.
That, to me, is a great metaphor. Here's a guy who was a fighter pilot. I know it's F-102 National Guard, but a 5-spiral crash.
Which means the plane's going down 5 times.
Spiral around 5 times.
That's what the campaign's going to be, because this guy can't get squad to show up.
I thought it was a terrific line.
It's an astute political observation.
Okay, let's take it.
Who brought this guy, Chris?
Let's go to the next one here. This is him on the president who succeeded him. Here's an excerpt again from this speechwriter about President Bush on President Obama. "This is a dangerous world," he said, for no apparent reason. "And this cat isn't remotely qualified to handle it. This guy has no clue, I promise you." He wound himself up even more. This is the president winding himself more. "You think I wasn't qualified?" Said to no one in particular. "I was qualified." From speechless, as I saw. Anyway,
this is what's that guy Stone that made that movie W? Yeah. This is it. The guy looks like he wrote. I mean, that is the George Bush.
You think I wasn't qualified? I was qualified.
I find him a fairly attractive. I mean, Bush a fairly attractive character from this. Very candid, honest.
But this is the Bush that I liked before the presidency.
He's a likable guy.
No, this is what we meant in the campaign. This is the trouble. We picked a guy that we thought we might like to hang out with. Pat, that's exactly the expression you've got on your face. You wouldn't mind being the next locker over.
He's a likable
But we
guy.
picked the guy as president of the United States.
But what I'd like to...
And he let Cheney call the shots.
Here's what he did in that huge economic disaster. He said, why did you guys let me come out for the proposal if we don't understand it?
This is why women don't look up to male political thinking. Because you're sitting here saying, forget the guy, whatever else. He's a regular guy, therefore anything goes. He takes shots at Hillary Clinton's physique. He takes shots at Biden's brains. He takes shots at everybody. But you're just chuckling. You're going to buy this book, aren't you?
I think it's entertaining.
I'm not selling it, by the way. I'm not telling anybody the name of the book.
It's a good read. Is it not a good read?
These parts are good.
It's entertaining. I think it's actually destructive. Okay, this guy wouldn't have a career. He wouldn't have a job if he wasn't.
Okay, now let's get sober here.
Well, no, I mean, not sober.
The guy's a snake.
I know, Mike, you're doing
right. The guy's a snake. He's telling stories out of his.
But why do we? Okay, here's the great conundrum.
Right.
We like these stories. We don't like people telling them. Explain it. He rats out his boss. We love the jokes because they're funny.
Well, Chris, you and I were just talking off camera. You and I know the LBJ story.
We know them all.
We know them all, and they're very funny. But I would think terribly, say, if a Joe Califano or somebody had done that stuff. And I think you're right. This guy, you ought to think badly of this guy. But quite frankly, the stories
why don't we
funny.
deal with this? How do we get these stories without getting them from rats?
All of us. The problem is,
shouldn't have them, Chris.
Yeah, and these stories don't have much redeeming historical value. I mean, the fact is, the guy was.
I disagree with you.
No,
I disagree with historians trying to figure these guys out.
That economic stuff,
they'll try to figure them out.
Came off a guy totally clueless.
Here is a guy who owes his job to George W. Bush. All of us have had the privilege of serving at the pleasure of a president.
Right.
If presidents get to the point where they can't speak candidly in front of their staff,
okay, remember the dinner we had, you and I were at it, of the Judson Welfare Society, former White House speechwriters. It's a bipartisan group. And it's always a great bit of fun. Especially it was more fun back in the old days when everybody drank, but it's still fun. And Ted Sorensen got into a big fight with Arthur Schlesinger at that meeting, remember? At somebody's house. And Arthur Schlesinger said, you should always tell stories about the boss because that's how we get history. And he went over Raymond Moley back for the Second New Deal and all this stuff. He said, you got to get stories that way. And Ted Sorensen says, you never rat out the boss.
Well, see, you do have to get, quite frankly, I do think you got to write history, and you've got to, I would write like a memoir, tell stories about Nixon and how he felt and things like that. But it's these personal, all of us know personal things that are family things that you know that you just don't tell.
No, that's right. I'm with you on that. I wouldn't do it.
No.
And what would you do?
Well, I wouldn't. I worked in a White House.
Are there any Al Gore stories you want to share with us right now? The exciting Al Gore?
During the next commercial break. By the way, I happen to think, and the stories that I would share about the former vice president would reflect well on him. This guy actually
the old joke about Al Gore? He was so boring that his Secret Service code name was Al Gore. Anyway, thank you, Pat Buchanan. Thank you, Michael Feldman.